Hi, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the 21st episode of Wear Many Hats, the podcast that is here to develop and bring forward the new leaders and also new professionals within the industry. Today, I'm really excited to be joined by Chris Ogier, the head of facilities at the English National Opera. Hello, Chris. How you doing?
I'm very well, thank you.
Absolute pleasure to have you here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
No, that's all right. Did you come far?
No, just around the corner.
Even better.
15-minute walk.
Oh, brilliant. Good stuff. I can tell you're fit. You were talking about fitness earlier on, so that's probably no challenge for you. Are you happy to get straight into the questions?
Yeah, let's crack on.
Fantastic. Okay, so I guess obviously we were chatting prior to the podcast, told us a little bit about your career journey, some really interesting things there, especially your transition from the armed forces. Could you tell us a little bit about that transition, how you found it, and what tips you would give to people that were doing a similar thing?
Yes, so I was in the parachute regiment for 7 years, and like a lot of young servicemen, you're coming to the end of your career and you're just trying to figure out what you're doing. It was no different for me. I had one idea. I wanted to get out and do close protection and make an absolute bucket of cash.
Yeah.
You get out, you can't find the connections or the contracts. So you have to start looking for other work.
Yeah.
And of course I had my SIA badge. So the SIA badge is the legal license that you need to carry out security.
Yep.
So I started looking for security jobs, and it was surprisingly difficult. I had a great CV, or what I would have thought for security.
Yep.
It took a good 6 months before I got a security gig.
Right.
And even then, it was nothing exciting.
Yep.
My first job, I think, was just standing to attention in a law firm reception. I was fresh to London, so I didn't really understand London people.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I'm in an empty reception where people aren't saying hello or sort of greeting you. And you're fresh out of the army, you're enthusiastic, you want to meet people, talk to people, and it was really deflating.
Yeah.
So after a couple of dull security gigs, I got in with a very good company, and they started giving me more and more work.
Right.
And I saw more and more of London.
Right.
And within that, I was working in all vast different buildings. And after putting in a good year and a half of graft, doing 12-hour shifts back to back. I think my record was 21 days straight.
Wow.
Because I was what they called a bench team, which meant you just filled the gaps.
So a relief officer.
Yeah, a relief officer.
Okay. Yeah.
Even with my great CV of being ex-forces, I still didn't have a proper position in a building. I was just floating around London.
Yeah.
And I did that for about 18 months to 2 years. And then...
did you learn quite a bit doing that, Chris? Because obviously I'm guessing you met different people, different...
Yeah. You learn an awful lot. You learn London very quickly.
Yeah.
I think
And all its quirks.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a Guernsey boy.
Right.
So Guernsey is very different to London.
Yeah, I'm from North Yorkshire, so I completely understand you.
Yeah, it's a small town mentality.
Yeah.
And when I was in the forces, I was in Colchester, which is also, relatively speaking to London, it's very small.
Yeah.
It was a culture shock, but I learned a lot of things, saw a lot of people, and within getting around, I sort of recognised what a facilities manager was and what a building manager was. And when I was a security manager, I had the opportunity to work close to the building manager, who was very inspirational, recognised she could see potential within me.
Right.
She put me forward to a level 3 apprenticeship scheme at the time.
Yeah. So sometimes that's all it takes, isn't it, for somebody to believe in you?
Someone to see it, yeah. Because how I got the job was I was just a relief guard on her site, and I think we bumped into each other in the canteen.
Yeah.
And we just had a bit of a chat. And yeah, she liked me. She sort of saw something in me, and she rang up the contracts manager and said, "I've got this position.
Yeah.
Can you send Chris along for an interview?"
Right.
And I think, so to bring me sort of back to what you were originally saying, sort of what would I advise people leaving the army?
Yeah.
You got to stay positive.
Yeah.
It's not easy. Stay positive. Do your research. Try to search your soul on really what you want to do.
Yeah.
And just don't be disheartened from starting from the bottom.
Yeah.
Because it's always going to be hard. I think a good skill or a recommendation would be probably get a professional. Sort of me looking back, if you can get a professional to sit down with you, focus on your CV, write your CV, so focus on your transferable skills.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of things within the military which is good for facilities.
Of course, yeah.
It's essentially its own little organisation. And within that organisation, you've got everything that is transferable for facilities.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah. So there I am, just a young 28-year-old now, sort of as a security manager. I've just taken over some old guy that's went for retirement.
Right. Well, congratulations at 28. That's a great achievement.
Yeah. The contract manager at the time, he did say you're the youngest security manager I've put through.
Fantastic.
And yeah, so with that, I've always been technical minded. It was being a security manager really taught me how to manage the people and sort of the soft service side of things.
Would you say that was a skill that was lacking until you took on that role as security manager?
I was, coming straight out of the paras, I was a little bit pig-headed.
Yeah. Right.
A little bit boisterous.
Yeah.
Every other word had an F in it.
Right.
And yeah, you can't talk to people like that in a corporate environment.
No.
Whether they're security or anybody. So I had a couple of warnings when I was a bit younger.
Transitional period, Chris. That's what it was. It was a transitional period.
Just polishing up the rock,
Yeah. So that's great, and thank you for the advice, to people who are leaving the army, because I think that really is important. That they know how to develop that pathway into a career in the civilian arena. So how did you transition from security manager into that facilities management role, and then obviously later on to head of facilities at your current position? Yeah,
so the building where I was a security manager at, it had a big question mark above it. They weren't sure what they wanted to do with the building, whether they wanted to knock it down, give it a cosmetic refurb, or a more in-depth refurb. And with that, I sort of sat back and I thought, right, this is my time. I need a break.
Right.
So I buggered off to Thailand for 8 months, became a scuba diving instructor.
Oh, really? Right. Okay. Fair enough. That was a bit of a swerve.
Yeah. So that was. So I did that, which was incredible. Anybody, if they have the opportunity to sort of get away and save their money up and get away for a year, I'd definitely recommend.
And become a scuba diving instructor in Thailand.
Yeah. Just getting away from the UK, having a gap year.
Yeah.
Because I hadn't really taken any breaks like that. Throughout my whole 20s.
Yeah, of course.
Straight out of school into work, then joining the army.
Yeah.
It was really good for me, and I came back to the UK. I moved to Birmingham to be close to my mum.
Yeah.
And from that point, with my my new apprenticeship qualification in facilities management, I started adjusting my CV. and sort of rewording it and sort of making it more relatable to facilities.
Yep.
And with that, I was lucky enough to get my first job as a manager at a secondary school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It was covering another very old guy that was comes to the end of his retirement.
Right.
It was an incredible experience because it's educational. Well, it's because it's in education. The compliance side of it is through the roof.
I imagine it's very demanding.
Yeah. The company I worked for, it was a PFI contract.
Right.
So you're answering to there's a lot of key stakeholders that you've got to answer to. Okay. And the company that I was working for, they're one of the oldest companies in the industry.
Right.
So they're strict audits and everything like that. When I started working, I think we had a pre-audit and it came in around 60%. Right. Long story short, I ended up being part of the 2 secondary schools in the space of 6 months.
Right. So you took on a second school?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay.
Wow. So the guy who I was covering, because I was only supposed to be there on agency, the guy I was covering came back. So they said, "Oh, we really like you," and coincidentally, there was another agency person covering another secondary school. She left.
Right.
So then I started working there, and then the other guy went sick again.
Yeah.
So then I was floating between 2 schools in the space of 6 months.
And how many students were in those 2 schools, out of interest?
I have no idea. It was... I think it was 750 and 900.
Wow, so it's a lot.
Yeah, it's quite big schools. And anyway, yes. So I had these audits been taking place, and remember, this was my first ever job. I didn't really first job in facilities. I didn't really understand all the compliance stuff, even though I'd been a security manager, dealing with all contractors and sort of overseeing some stuff. But I didn't know the depth of the compliance. Both audits were completed at over 95%. So,
oh, well done.
Yeah, I was pretty chuffed with that.
So you took on Richard Branson's mantra of no matter what, if it's offered, just say yes.
Just
and
say
then figure
yes.
out how to do it later.
Well, that's pretty much how I got on this podcast.
Hey, you're not the first one. That's how I ended up being host, Chris. Oh, brilliant. Okay, so obviously, moving away from the schools, you're now in this new role. So tell us a little bit about because it's obviously you've gone one up from facilities manager now. You're now head of facilities.
Yeah. So when I was in the schools, my partner at the time was in New Zealand.
Right. Know it well. Lived there for 8 years.
Yeah. So she's locally. She's got a New Zealand passport, so she's a Kiwi.
Yeah.
She went over there, but unfortunately, COVID hit.
Right. Yeah.
She was able to get back to the UK before everything shut down because she was missing me.
Oh yeah, well, obviously, yeah, she couldn't stay with it.
But we were living up in Wolverhampton, which is close to Birmingham.
Yeah.
I think she was there for a couple of seconds before she said, "We are not staying around here."
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
So in the middle of COVID, we popped smoke, and I managed to get. Moved to London without a job in the middle of COVID.
Right.
And managed to get a job at a very well-known dog charity.
Yes, I know it. Another one you're talking about. Yeah.
Which was an absolute eye-opener.
Yeah.
There I was the facilities team leader.
Yep.
And I was there for, crikey, I think it's about 18 months.
Right.
18 months to 2 years.
Yep.
And I wanted more.
Yeah.
and so I started looking, and I took the job that came to me as facilities manager. I was really excited for that.
Yeah.
And within the space of a year,
And this is obviously this is obviously at the English National Opera.
English National Opera, yeah.
Yeah, which is quite a grandiose.
It is, yeah. The Coliseum is a Grade 2 listed building.
Yeah,
it's the biggest biggest seated theatre in the West End.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Yeah. It's such a beautiful building.
Yeah. Is it haunted?
This is the second time I've had this conversation today.
Any building that's over 20 years old, I ask, is it haunted?
No, so we were only talking about this morning.
Yeah.
So I googled it, and it is it's in the top 20
really?
haunted theatres. Yes. So the story that I read this morning was there was a group of guys who saw their friend going down the aisle. And this was World War One period.
Yeah.
And then he just vanished. But
really?
What they later realised, that day he died in the trenches. And on his last day of leave, he was at the theatre.
Oh, the hairs have stood up on the back of my neck.
So, yeah, freaky. Freaky stuff.
Is. Sorry, I am terrible. I apologise for that segue. Going back to your role as head of facilities management at the National Opera.
Yes, so I was... I was facilities manager at the English National Opera.
Yeah.
And the head of facilities left in January.
Right.
And with a couple of meetings, they promoted me to head.
Brilliant. Well, congratulations.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
And how are you finding that role?
It's challenging.
Yeah.
It's the rates of how my career sort of rocketed upwards, I suppose. It's been a very steep learning curve.
Yeah.
And I've still got a lot to learn, but I'm very open to learn. I think Shakespeare said something along the lines of fools will brag that they're smart, and smart people will believe they're fools.
Yes.
So
every day is a school day.
Yeah, every day is a school day.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah. All right, Chris. Well, listen, thank you. That's absolutely great. I'm going to have to move on to some of the questions now because we've digressed somewhat, but that's just because of your incredibly interesting journey. So thank you for that. So obviously, what advice would you give to someone who is interested in starting a career in facilities management? What would your view be for them?
You've got to be curious.
Yeah.
You've got, you're never going to know everything.
Yep.
Don't be afraid to ask questions. Surround yourself with positive people who are intellectual, sort of above you.
Yeah.
What's the saying? It's iron sharpens iron.
Very true. Yes.
Always be curious. Always ask those questions. You're going to be in situations where you're asked to put a project together, or even a small job, and you're just like, crikey, what's that?
Yeah.
So you can either be one of two people. You can just relay information to a contractor and say, can you quote for X, Y, Z?
Yeah.
But of course, you need to understand, if you're to do your due diligence properly, you need to understand what the job is.
Yeah.
And to make sure no contractor's pulling the wool over your eyes. So
yeah.
Always ask questions, always be curious, and always just put yourself sort of out there.
Oh, fantastic. Brilliant. Cheers. So on to a bit of an intro. I always like this question. Where do you see artificial intelligence playing a role in facilities management?
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, God, the rate it's rocketing. What can it do?
Exactly.
The sky's the limit. It'll be able to do absolutely anything. I'm not saying that it would have robots carrying out labour in the next 20 years.
I hope not.
Maybe the next 100. But
we'll all be retired.
Yeah. But I was watching a video of Google. It was a Google demonstration the other day, and it was the Google Assistant ringing a hair salon and booking an appointment in for what she said was her client, but it was obviously just her phone user. And the speech on this AI was incredible.
Really?
First she asked for 12 o'clock. The hairdresser came in, oh, no, but I could do 2 or 3. The AI sort of very realistically stops, goes, what about anything before 12? And just carried on the conversation and just booked it in. So to relate that to facilities, you could have an engineer, he could have a task on his iPad, iPhone. Yeah, he could be working on an AHU and say, you need a couple of new switches here and there. He just pushes job complete with recommended parts.
Yeah.
The AI might be able to pick that up, go to your 3 top suppliers, ring them up simultaneously, find the cheapest part or the one that's got the quickest lead time, and it's being sent to you. And I don't think that's really that far out there after listening to this Google AI booking a hair appointment.
Yeah. I mean, do you also think that kind of technology could take over for help desk provisions, for example?
Yeah.
Where you're not talking to a person who's booking in, for example, the lift servicing or, it's actually AI doing the booking, managing the diary. It's not an individual. Is that something that you think is up?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there's CAFM systems out there which can pretty much do that, but it's all in text. But just having that verbal communication is just that one step further.
Yeah.
There's CAFM systems out there that will pick words out of a help desk job and give it to the most suited engineer. So, it'll pick out toilet, pipes, whatever, and it'll go straight to the plumber that you got on shifts. There's CAFM systems that can read the rosters.
Yeah.
So you'll be able to find what plumber, what time he's on, and just throw him that job.
I never thought about that. That's, to be fair, you're the first person that's come up with that kind of response.
So we're already there.
I think I don't think we actually have a good grasp on how far it's already gone. I really don't. And I think I actually watched a program. You'll probably be quite interested in this being an ex-para, but I watched a program yesterday on Netflix. It's called Untold, the series.
Right.
And it was talking about AI and robotics and how that will impact war and things like that and what they'll be able to do with it in terms of, fighter jets that aren't manned, it's just literally AIs. But what they'll be able to do, because there's no men or no human beings or anything like that flying these aircraft, they'll be able to just build thousands of them. The new weapon to be scared of is swarms of fighter jets just attacking whoever they want to. So, what it can do is just amazing. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, they've already got fightless jets. They're called drones.
True. Yeah.
So again, it's just the same sort of thing, but just looks slightly different.
Yeah, because it's machine learning now, isn't it? Yeah. That's what I saw on there. Because the AIs of the past, they didn't have the capacity to learn. Everything had to be plumbed into it. Whereas now, because of machine learning, it can learn as it goes, and it gets better and better and better, and it's going to impact every element of our lives.
Yeah, I mean, I was listening to another podcast actually, and they were talking about AI.
Yeah,
and it was sort of around this chat GPT.
Yeah,
and he said, you don't have to worry about it being so much self-learning. It's very much like a puppy. And it's here to sort of please you. And
that's quite an interesting analogy.
Yeah,
it's here to please you.
It's so I think the self-learning is, I don't know, it's scary to think of, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Because self-learning, that's when they become self-conscious, and we've all seen those films.
Yeah. The old T-1000 chasing you down the street.
We don't want that.
Fancy that. Well, we probably won't be here anyway. Well, me, definitely. Maybe you might still be around, Chris. I don't know. Okay, brilliant. So just sort of moving away from that and just talking about something that's quite pertinent, across business at the minute, not just facilities management. So how do you think that environmental, social and governance issues impact facilities management and the decisions made within facilities management?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, everything's financial.
Yeah.
There's so many things. You can start the small scale of things and say how there's so many halogen light bulbs that are now being discontinued and they're coming off the shelf. So that's forcing those buildings to now purchase LED, which is a good thing, obviously, and you do make your money back.
Yeah,
but the initial payment's always quite high.
There's always a capex at the beginning.
And then you got the higher scale of things where everyone wants to be net zero. All these buildings in London are going to aim to be net zero by 2030.
Yeah,
the electrical grid can't
cope with
that.
Yeah.
And I've been told that with projects that I've wanted to do and install ground source heat pumps. It's like we can put it there, but the grid's not going to be able to support it.
Yeah.
So where does that leave you?
It's a very good question. It really is. You know, it's a very good question. Where does it leave us? You know, how do we overcome that challenge without significant investment on new infrastructure? You know, and how do you do that in a place like London? You know, how does that even manifest?
That is crazy. I mean, I don't know if they're gonna. You know, is there some more tidal electric generation sort of things that they can put around in the Thames? I don't know.
We could always dig up Nicholas Tesla.
Yeah.
You know, see what he has to say about it. Or ask the CIA to release the documents.
I'll tell you what, though, I have been following this for years, and that's the super sewer that they want to put in the Thames.
Really?
Yeah. Have you not heard of it?
No. What's that?
So it was only on the news recently. I've been geeking out over this. So,
have you? No, go on then. Tell us all about it.
So yes, the sewers in London. Yeah, they're Victorian.
Yeah, 18th and 19th century out there, yeah.
So, you know, back then, you know, there's probably a couple of thousand people living in London. Yeah. So, obviously, what's the figures now in London? It's got to be...
It's like 10 million,
10 million.
Yeah.
So, you think... So, that's why we have such issues. When it rains, all the sewage just overflow. You know, the Thames looks grey on the best of days.
Yeah.
So this has got to be going on for 8 years now.
Right.
And it's coming close to an end, I think. And they're putting a super sewer in the Thames, which is going to clean out all of the Thames.
Really?
And it's going to bulletproof our sewage system, they reckon, for 200 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And with that, they're talking about having pubs that are on the Thames front. They could put up sort of. You know what they call the platforms that
the boy platforms, like floating piers and things like
that. So basically, you'll be able to put sort of bathing areas outside these pubs, which will be a massive tourist attraction because the Thames is going to be that clean.
Really?
Yeah. It's it's going to be cool.
Honestly,
yeah.
Well, it creates a whole new industry as well, I suppose.
It does. It was on the news the other day, and I was a bit upset by it because it was the government blowing money, if you ask me.
Right.
So you've got this 80-foot cylinder running underground, and the government spent an awful lot of money putting this artificial garden down there, only for a short amount of time. So you had to get crane lifted down to drop into this massive tunnel to have a look at this artificial garden for a short amount of time, and it was only really for people that.
For what purpose though? Why?
Just for show, just for a bit of morale for people that knew it was even there. I don't really know the purpose of it, and that's why it just seemed like an absolute waste of money from the old gov.
Yeah, is this the? I think I saw something. Is this the sewer system where recently they had either an orchestra or somebody playing a wooden instrument down there for its opening?
I didn't see that, but yeah, it's probably. Yeah.
It probably could be, yeah. To be fair, I glanced it, so I didn't read the article properly, but I think I saw something along those lines. And I saw about the Thames, but I didn't realise they were going to be able to swim in it and and all of those great things. Ooh, interesting.
Well, so that's what I read I started reading this. It's got to be 8 years ago now.
Right. Okay.
So I've been kind of keeping an eye on it ever since.
You're gonna have to keep dropping me texts on that one.
Yeah.
Keep me updated with the outcome.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, brilliant. How important do you think the Internet of Things is becoming in facilities management? So,
Yes, it's so important.
Mm.
Everything from water hygiene to customer experience. You've got the water hygiene. It could be, you could be monitoring the temperatures. You could have automatic dosing devices, and then obviously, all the sensors that are around the buildings. My building's pretty prehistoric.
I like that description.
Yeah, and so it's nothing compared to some of the smart buildings that you have out there.
Yeah.
But these smart buildings, they're incredible. And just keeping data, because without data, you don't know how to improve your energy consumption if you don't have the data to back it up. So the IoTs that monitor everything. It's very important, especially if you're to improve your building.
Right. Okay. Okay. So, what are some of the common challenges that you would face on a daily, effectively, in facilities management? Is there anything that stands
What's
out?
your biggest challenge in 2023?
My biggest challenge?
Yeah.
At the minute, trying to lose some weight.
It's inflation, isn't it?
Inflation. Hey, that's an interesting answer. Nobody's given us that yet.
Yeah, no, inflation it's gone through the roof.
Right.
You put your budget plan in 2022. No one calculated this inflation.
Yeah.
So all budgets are suffering because no one's been able to account for it. Materials, labour, everything's gone through the roof. I think materials in 2021, in sort of mid-COVID, materials on wood started just skyrocketing.
Right.
Inflation. Contractors, they don't like. They will always say, "Oh, we'll hold this cost for 30 days."
Yeah.
They don't even like doing that now.
Yeah.
It's ever changing. But you worked on that challenge. You shop around. You use your charm. You got to be a bit cheeky to get the best bang for your buck sometimes.
No, without a doubt.
But yeah, inflation is it's hard.
Let's hope that the steps that are being taken will mean that inflation isn't a problem for a significant period of time.
Yeah,
it comes down.
Yeah, I think it's crazy because in COVID people were closing because they weren't having customers in. Now they're closing because they can't pay rent.
Yeah,
or the energy bills, or they can't do the necessary repairs. You get your boiler serviced.
Yeah.
Or your gas cookers, and they say, well, you got all these remedials, and you're just stuck because you can't afford to repair them.
That's a very interesting point, actually, because I think we forget sometimes that people across the economy, not just in facilities management, have had a double whammy. Really, we've gone straight from the pandemic, which was a significant crisis, into high inflation, high interest rates and things like that, which is another significant crisis. So we've gone from one straight into the other. So the impact on business, is clearly significant. Okay, brilliant.
Yeah, I keep on replaying that meme in my head of you've got like 2022 and then 2023 is like, oh, my beer, Yeah. Watch me talk Trump that.
Yeah, it's true story. True story. At least we're not locked in the house this time, though. That's
it.
That's
freedom.
Yeah, freedom. What do you think the biggest opportunities and challenges are in facilities management over the next 5 years?
Again, it's AI.
Yeah.
It's the biggest opportunity and the biggest challenge. You got to be flexible. You got to roll with it, or you're going to end up like Blockbusters, and be screwed. I mean, it's all going in that direction. That it's the technology trend and the environmental and sustainability trends that are just going to Absolutely, it's going to come in fast and aggressive, and you've got to be with it, or you're going to get left in the dust.
Yeah, you've got to have that ability to be dynamic and flexible and move quickly. I suppose. Okay, really great. So let's move on to you a little bit now. We've talked about the industry for a period of time. So what are some of your greatest achievements in your career in facilities management?
Like I mentioned earlier, making head of facilities for the English National Opera. That's by far the greatest achievement. Getting my first facilities job, jumping from security, and getting into facilities. It wasn't easy. If I was to advise to anybody, as well as being curious, you got to be persistent.
Yeah.
I think at the time, while I was trying to get a job in facilities, I was cutting around Solihull in Birmingham on Saturday and Sunday nights with my Kevlar vest on, escorting people who were being kicked out of pubs.
Right.
You're doing that so you can pay the bills.
Yeah.
But if you're having a full-time job while trying to look for the job that you want, that becomes a very hard thing to juggle. So you just gotta, you gotta do enough to pay the bills, but also focus on really where you want to get to.
Yeah. So that persistence is a key element to how you found success throughout your career.
Yeah. That's it. So that was getting into facilities is a big gold star.
Yeah.
And then obviously becoming head of facilities for an excellent organisation like E&O.
Yeah, well done. Okay, so conversely, any regrets in facilities management? Anything you want to, or is there anything you can't tell us? Or
No, strangely enough, I don't have any regrets.
Right.
I've been incredibly lucky. People have called me crazy. When I was up in Wolverhampton, I had a good secure job. And they said you're crazy to move down to London in the middle of COVID.
To be fair, that is quite brave.
It was,
it is quite brave.
But fortune favours the bold.
Very true.
Until it all goes wrong.
Can't go wrong all the time.
And even when I moved to London and I had my job as a facilities team leader, and I moved from there. It was quite bold.
Yeah.
But I just felt that I could offer more. I was being around other people. I really sort of thought I had more to offer. I was getting my head around, the systems and all the technical elements within the buildings more than people that have been doing the job for 20 odd years.
Right.
No regrets. I've still got many years in front of me. I'm sure there's going to be.
Yeah, I'm sure there's an opportunity for a few to pop up.
I'm going to stumble somewhere. That's for sure.
As we all do. None of us are infallible.
Yeah.
None of us are infallible. Okay, that's brilliant. Listen, we've talked about everything work, which is great. So tell us a little bit about you. What gives you pleasure outside of work or in work? What do you like to do? Who is Chris?
Eating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eating?
Yeah. Love to eat, yeah.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah.
So do I, as you can probably tell.
Yeah. No comment.
I've lost a stone and a half recently, Chris, so don't worry about it. I've eased off a little bit.
Well done. I love cooking. I love focusing on myself. Trying to be positive and always pushing yourself.
Yeah.
I've got a wonderful girlfriend.
Yep.
Who she's always, me and her, we motivate each other.
Yeah. Pushes you on.
Pushes me on.
Keeps you going. Yeah.
Tells me, if it wasn't for her, then I might not have pushed myself as hard as I have. But she's the type of girl. She last year she did positive psychology and coaching masters while in full-time employment.
Yeah.
yeah, she's definitely worked some of those coaching skills on me.
Yeah. Well, behind every good person is a great partner, as they say.
Definitely.
That keeps you moving forward.
But yeah, no, eating, being active,
Yeah.
and just not taking life so seriously.
Brilliant.
Because I think a lot of people, they do get weighed down by the little things.
Yes, the minutiae, as they say.
I said to someone the other day, I said, look, I think if everybody got shot at a few times, they might not be so serious in the everyday life.
Yeah. To be fair, that's a fair analogy.
You see life in a different perspective.
Yeah. Hopefully that doesn't happen. I think that would probably be a bad day.
Yeah.
To be fair. But listen, Chris, thank you very, very much. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on our 21st episode of Wear Many Hats. All right, guys, listeners, that's everything for our 21st episode. I'd like to thank Chris for coming on the show. It's been incredibly interesting hearing about your journey from obviously the paratroopers all the way through to your current position as head of facilities. Thank you very much for your time. It's been great having you.
Yeah, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure being here.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.